generate less power and are less effective, bizarrely. You have to find some comfort.
Completely, and I think a really prime example of that is when we saw the peak of the battle between Anna van der Breggen and Annemiek van Vleuten. Everybody used to talk about their positioning on the bike because you could look at Anna, her face, her demeanour, her body language. She always looked so calm. Annemiek would have a much more animated style, look like she was throwing it around, and then you'd never be able to tell who was going to take it out of the two of them because their stance on a bike was so different, but they were both able to win Grand Tours, go solo, do the big mountains. You know, they had the capability to go head to head in that with two completely different styles. So if you were to say to Annemiek van Vleuten, okay, so try and position yourself more like Anna van der Breggen, well, that wouldn't work for her. And I think it also, well, yes, it wouldn't have gone down well because they were both the best in the world. So you wouldn't need to alter their position. But that's another thing. It's easy for onlookers to say, oh, I think they're slightly toe down or they're heel out, or I would correct that. But if it's working for them, they don't need to correct that. They've done so much testing with the team to see where they need to be, and they've got it drilled, they've got it right, and it works for them.
Frolova, despite sharing the early intermediate split with Nirere, the difference between them at the third checkpoint was 10 seconds, and the fade has continued throughout the run, I'm afraid, which actually all it does is underscore what a spectacular leader we have of this race, probably spurred on by national pride, Nirere. But Frolova, I'm afraid, is going to find herself way down, and that hot seat, which looks very comfy, I must admit. Parker Knoll.
This is our first sighting of the actual hot seat, isn't it? With Nirere in there. You could just see her sort of already just her hands over her face, like, because it's such a hard place to be, isn't it? It's a joyful place to go into the hot seat, but you want to stay there for as long as possible, just to state the obvious. And but this just goes to show how important that pacing is today.
And what Nirere did, I mean, she's hiding her smile because she's a modest person and doesn't want to be seen to be celebrating. I guess almost the failure of others. Exactly.
I wouldn't be hiding it. No, I take that. And it's really interesting, isn't it, to see the array of emotions when someone has gone into that pole position. They are sat in that hot seat, and we get to see them watching every rider take off around the course. Who is going to beat them? Who's going to better the time? And it is a really interesting element of time trials, because sometimes we do see an incredibly strong rider go off early, and then they are there with bated breath for so long. But we have some incredibly fast riders out on the course. Here's Marta Giessens at the moment for Belgium, and just look speed. And I've been really trying to squint in at the setup and the gearing of some of these riders to be more recent starters, because we know how much pressure and power can be potentially retained on the descents. So that's going to have been a really big balancing point for teams and riders coming into today, looking at the tech on the bike, looking at the gear ratios, whether they go for 1 or 2 at the front, is because not only have you got the gradients, but you could potentially still at the least maintain or gain on some of those power descents.
This is Van der Breggen. Just coming through at, it'll be our initial checkpoint along the way, still with an awful long way to go, but this should be a mighty trim, one can only imagine. Let's wait and see. We've seen some strong performances out there. Shang and Paladin seem to be measuring themselves against each other at the moment, waiting for the third timing checkpoint for both of them. But I think we're going to be starting to nudge down closer towards 45 minutes by the end. At the moment, Nirere has a finish time that was absolutely spectacular, over a minute clear of Frolova. Watango has also finished, nudging up towards the 2-minute mark. Kiplagat coming home 7 minutes and 47 further away from Nerere, which shows you what Nerere has managed to pull out for this course. A course I am absolutely certain she has probably spent an awful lot of time practicing. And there's no shame in that. I imagine.
Absolutely.
I imagine the authorities have given her several runs on closed roads to make sure that she produces a good time. But she's lived up to the billing. It's all very well starting off as favourite, but you have to get into that spotlight and accept the burden.
I've just distracted there for a moment because we just had Saito Martagusens there, and we were talking about how pivotal aero gains are today and staying in position, and her number has fallen down.
I saw that.
And yeah, that's not it's not an ideal thing to happen early on when we're talking about everything on the skin suit being perfectly slick. But yes,
Say something.
yes, you may.
It might actually help at dissipating the air off the bag. Did you know that they actually the most aero rendering of hair on your legs, stick with it, is actually to shave the front of your legs and leave the back of your calves hairy, because of
So you think she's positioned this number
No,
for the aero gain?
I don't think it's deliberate, but I actually think, strangely, it might actually be helping. The odd little watt or two to dissipate, rather like the golf ball effect. You have dimples on a golf ball, and the reason that it flies further than a smooth golf ball is because it traps the air within those little, the small eddy currents form within the ball itself, and so the air that it's going through passes over more air, and so it actually has a less impactful effect. So yes, there is a dissipation factor here, but I'm not saying it's deliberate by any means. You'd probably rather have the number in the right place. Apart from anything else, you can hear it.
It might be a slight distraction. But no, it is a really interesting talking point. Well, it's very interesting for me as an utter tech geek, I must admit. But it is really interesting. And I've been privy to wind tunnel testing, to track testing, where you just constantly alter the smallest factors. And I've just had my jaw to the floor at the difference it makes immediately when you change one tiny factor, like you say. And we've understood more and more, haven't we, about aero gains over the years. We've had some really key riders just pushing forward the development and the understanding of why it really matters. And we joke about these things, but it could be as simple as one little ridge on a skin suit or something like that.
Amazing.
And I must just throw in my huge tangent that when I was heavily pregnant, I went cycling with one of our lovely colleagues, Matt Stevens, and he then started the talking point that pregnancy bumps make you more aero, because he believes that that is a fact. And then I said, yes, but if I'm more aero, I'm going to say that's going to be outweighed quite literally by the fact that I can barely get on the bike.
yeah, exactly. No, that effect I was telling you about is the reason why javelins, for example, have a sort of a rough surface on the tail. It's exactly the same thing. The problem is, if you only shave the front of your legs and leave the back of your legs hairy, it looks terrible.
I'm not sure it's going to be worth any gains for me to do that, but it is good to know.
Exactly. Anyway, moving. Apparently, it's also hairy legs make it very painful to receive massage. There you go.
That's the other thing, isn't it?
Yes.
That is the other thing.
Off we go, and they're coming thick and fast right now. This is wonderful. It feels like a big party today, and why not? Our friend from Norway still plying a trade upon the course, and let's just give you some updates, shall we? Zhang is still quickest at the second split, so I'm expecting the Chinese athlete to come through the third split as well. She's 1 minute and 12 up on Paladin. Is this Patarova coming to the finish now? It is. And still we have Zavary Nirere in the hot seat and has not been upset yet. Look at the heat haze we're starting to see generated as well. And as we get to a hotter part of the day, which is just a natural thing, of course, as the sun indeed starts to rise, same as Central European time. So we're just after 11:30 in the morning, local time here. Patapova comes to the line, and they all know how tough this has been. But every single finisher we have just adds to Nerere's kudos as the home favourite, doing an amazing job.
Yeah, so Xavier Nerere, the first off the ramp this morning, we were talking about how she had to measure the effort with the huge support that she's got here, with the fact that the occasion for her was so massive, being the debut rider to go off in these World Championships. Absolutely huge. Being the Rwandan national TT champion, there were so many things that she had to measure in the way she handled today. And the ride she put in was evidently fantastic. And I think we said, didn't we, it's very hard to tell with the first riders, let alone the first rider off, what we're expecting from the field overall. But she put in such a measured effort. Her position looked so smooth. She got absolutely everything out of this cobbled section towards the last few hundred metres. And yeah, it was job done for her, and she's still sat in that hot seat. It's amazing.
Paladin just catching Benin's Wesiu, and indeed sailing right, did the right thing, just got out of the gave a decent gap between the pair. You're not allowed to sit in before 10 metres have been extended. That doesn't look like 10 metres to me, so I'm afraid that the Benin rider just getting a little bit of aero assist, possibly just being warned. Over to the other side of the road goes Paladin. Now, don't forget that Shang is also on course. She'll be coming in behind Paladin in a few moments' time. But as it is, driving for the line is Paladin. She's already caught her 2.5-minute athlete in Ahuisu. We're staying with Ahuisu right now so that the motorcycle doesn't get involved in a negative way, but now is allowed to move forward by the commissaire. Good work. And so it is that Paladin is in the most difficult part of the course. Now, Paladin was second quickest out the split, but gave away 1:12 to Zhang, who will be picking up, I presume, fairly soon. Meanwhile, further out on course, this is Van der Breggen, and just look at this first intermediate. The clock's green. She's not that far away from the intermediate, so one can only suspect that this is going to be a mighty trim. We shall wait and see. We've got some great riders out there. I desperately want to get back to Paladin, actually, to see her finish, because I think she is going to take the lead. So relieve Xavier Nerere of her position in the hot seat. 12.9 kilometre marker is going to be this split. Just a little bit of pixelation. You'll forgive us for that. But she's going to bring this one home. We're going to see a lot of chops and changes. This is essentially, I believe, going to be the first one. So it is Soraya Paladin, who has had a road back to recovery, and at least she gets a comfy chair, I imagine, in a few moments' time. Here's Van der Breggen, and there is the Tissot timing. And look at this for a trim. Van der Breggen finds 50 seconds as a trim for the fastest so far, celebrates with a little toot on the bottle, and she now has to finish the job.
She does, but that's something she knows so well, is measuring her effort. I don't think I've ever seen her make mistakes in this scenario about what she expects from a course. And look at the position. She is just so well drilled at perfecting a time trial. I think what was so interesting coming into this season is how she would fare, and she's just delivered. So today's immensely exciting. But here is Soraya Paladin.
It is going to be our benchmark. We suspected that. She's been so strong out on the course. Just out, goes on to the drops, just gets out of the saddle to bring this one home. And thanks to Xavier Nerere, but she's going to be relieved of that position in a few moments' time. Paladin is going to bring this home. Still quite a way to go. It's a tight camera angle. You can't quite see where she is relative to the finish, but she's into the rainbow stripes hoarded section. And here we go, heads up just to this crest. She's going to come over the top. It's going to be our first sub 50-minute time. And all credit to Paladin. Just at that respite zone right now. It's almost cruelty in action as you watch it. Back out of the saddle, just wants to get the best time possible. You see the line, but actually it just seems to go further and further away from you with every pedal stroke. There is this little dish she has to go into and come out of once again. It's not the most challenging finale in terms of geography here, considering what she's already put in, but stops the clock. And a minute and 30 trim. We got a 48.36. That is a very strong time. And thanks to Zavarine Nerere for setting a great benchmark. But it's Soraya Paladin that takes the lead.
Yeah, tough moment for Nerere there. She'll leave that hot seat, but we just once again must mark what a brilliant benchmark she put in early on